We're going to talk some of the benefits and the drawbacks to the different types of project delivery methods. Specifically, I'm going to focus primarily on design build, P3s, and the design assist slash delegated design. I'm not going to spend an extensive amount of time on integrated project delivery simply because it just is not used that much in the real world. And so I think time is better spent on the other items. So we talked a little bit briefly in the earlier sessions about design bid build versus design build. And I think that that is really where you will find the biggest discrepancy and argument over the benefits of one specific project delivery versus another. Really, public-private partnerships or P3s are almost always taking a design build format. And so I really kind of will lump them into, I guess, more of the design build delivery, although there are some benefits in terms of the ability to provide really large scale projects at a very low cost for public entities. But for all intents and purposes, in terms of just strict project delivery, in terms of setup of relationship between owner, architect, and contractor, they are more akin and under the umbrella of a design build. So when parties often compare design bid build and design build, they talk about really a couple of different, benefits and drawbacks to each one of these items. I think depending on who you ask, people may feel very strongly in one way or another. I think this is a great place. I'm going to open up a discussion. If people have a very strong opinion as to, benefits that they see in a specific delivery method versus the other delivery method. I welcome that discussion. I think it can get very interesting. So many people will say that that design build, that some of the benefits is that potentially you may actually be able to get a better pricing for an owner. And they say that because of the fact that because the contractor is underneath the contractor, because the architect and engineer are underneath the contractor, and there is more of this iterative back and forth in terms of the design and its constructability, that at the end of the day, you may have actually a design that is more efficient to build and more efficient for the schedule, and time equals money. And so as a general result, because the contractor is not just simply handed a set of drawings to just bid off of generally, and they're able to work and do a collaborative process, that overall that then may be more budget friendly. There is the other side of that will argue that design bid build potentially could actually be more budget friendly because of the fact that you may not be going through such a iterative process over the course of the project, and that potentially if you were able to lock in a contractor based on a complete set of drawings, you may be able to actually get a better price, because at that point they may know every single thing that's going to be in there. And if a contractor has to, some design builds, they have to actually issue their GMP based on a very early set of drawings, and they may inflate that number to give themselves some float and some contingency in case they wind up needing more money at the end of the day. So I think there's arguments really on both sides as the benefits of both. There's an argument that design build potentially could create a more efficient schedule, because the fact that you don't have to stop and put documents out on the street and let bids come in and review the bids and negotiate the agreements, because you are doing the negotiation really all up front, and you're not having to go through that entire bidding process after the drawings are complete, that you're able to just more seamlessly roll through the design process and straight into construction. And then alternatively, you're able to do earlier packages, such as fast track or some structural packages earlier, because of the fact that you already have everybody on board, from a very early standpoint. And so you don't need to kind of stop and be in a holding pattern until they're able to hire a contractor, as you might have to in design bid build. I think an interesting thing that comes up between the parties of design build and design bid build is does one give potentially a better outcome in terms of the design or in terms of the construction quality? And I've seen arguments on both sides of this. I will tell you that when you are when you work for an AE firm, there is a concern that design build potentially makes you lose the ability to keep control as an architect over the final design of the project. The fear comes from the fact that you, as a sub-consultant to the contractor, you don't really have anywhere to go to complain if in construction administration the contractor starts to suddenly change things in the field, or isn't doing what they are technically supposed to be doing. You're complaining in essence to your client, but your client is actually the contractor party, who is supposedly the person who's doing all of this that's wrong. I think different from that, when you are in design bid build as an architect, there is a feeling that because you are straight to the owner, and the owner is the party at the end of the day who perhaps cares the most about the design of the building, that you are able to complain or exert pressure directly on an owner when you get into CA via rejection of certain shop drawings, or sitting in OAC meetings, and just voicing general opinions, maybe denying payment applications of a contractor. That there are kind of more, sticks and more avenues to kind of seek your assistance if you need to, in order to make a contractor perform, or make a contractor maintain the integrity of the design that you have done in design bid build, because you're able to go through the owner, and then the owner goes to the contractor, as opposed to being a sub-consultant to the contractor, and you're kind of you're in a certain way trying to bite the hand that is also feeding you. I know that there's been a lot of discussion, at least in the industry, as to whether doing something like a design-led design build, whether that would be a way to maybe alleviate the difficulties encountered from designers in terms of maintaining the design and design build. I think that opens up, I think it's interesting, but I think it opens up a host of potentially really interesting issues in terms of how do architects or engineers who maybe are not as skilled in the true nuances of construction, which involves bonds and sureties and labor agreements and all of the stuff that doesn't apply to the AE community. How equipped are they if they are now the prime, and they're now responsible for the design builder and all of these trades? I think that we're probably a couple of years. There are some firms that are doing that. I think we are probably a couple of years away from that becoming more of a mainstream thing. I think also because generally, as we talked about in the design build realm, and we talked earlier in the party liability, contractors will typically take on more risk in their agreement, and so there is, I think, I'm not sure that clients, when they're used to certain terms in design build agreements, are going to willingly say, well, even though I know an architect and engineer has a different standard of care, when the architect and engineer is a prime, I'm willing to forego all the things I would have gotten otherwise if a contractor was a prime, like a warranty and liquidated damages. I am not sure that clients are going to want to do that. And so if they are not willing to let those terms go, if a designer is leading a design build, I'm not sure that a design-led design build is going to be that successful. But it is something that the industry is trying to think about in terms of helping to create kind of guard off against some of the issues that tend to come up in design build, in terms of not being able to maintain what people term as like design excellence, because you don't really have a party to complain to when you're under the contractor. Similarly, from a design builder standpoint, there are some benefits to design bid build, that I think over design build, in terms of the fact that you are not responsible for the architect. And so there is a clearer line of liability in terms of design issues and engineering issues than there is in design build. You're not responsible for them in a design bid build. And so you are much better able, if you are a contractor, to say that, well, these aren't my issues. These are not construction issues. The drawings were bad. And in a design build, if you are complaining that the drawings are bad, well, you are implicating yourself, because most likely you were part of that process from the beginning. And so, that is a much more difficult defense, to suddenly start to complain about the drawings. You may do that internally among the design build team, but in terms of a litigation or a lawsuit, you're going to be it's going to be a harder defense given that you're responsible for the AE team and you were part of that process to start to complain loudly about the quality of the drawings. But much harder than if you were in design bid build and you bid on a set of drawings and then you can later say, well, the drawings were all garbage when we finally got out there and started building. I think that is significantly easier. So we talked a little bit briefly about, so again, we'll move on to the design assist, but if you have any thoughts about that, we'll start a discussion and see if people have any other thoughts about maybe other possible, benefits or drawbacks to one delivery method over another. But talking about, design assist or delegated design, they can be, extremely helpful on a project. As we mentioned, for something like design assist, to where you can get trades to come on, they can work very collaboratively with an engineer in order to do certain components of a project. That can be extremely cost savings and time savings, and quite frankly, makes for often a better, more efficient design, an actual end product than had it gone through a typical, procurement process. Some places where I have seen, kind of a drawback to, design assist and alternatively delegated design is when there are specifications that call for certain design assist or certain delegated designs, really more delegated design. So design assist being where, just to clarify, where you're helping, there's a collaboration, and delegated design where you as an architect are saying, well, certain components will be designed by the contractor or by a specific trade. It's a slightly less collaborative process. It's really saying, well, we're not doing certain portions of it. You will be doing those since you are the best people to be doing those. I think a clear example of really more delegated design is stuff like cold metal forming, and there's certain components in terms of structural engineering that are just there's too many of them, and they're really more of the actual building process, and it doesn't make sense for a structural engineer to actually do the designing of them, and so they delegate that design out to a specific trade underneath the contractor to do it. But an issue that I've seen, sorry for that segue, but I just want to make sure that we're clear on the difference between those two, because they often are combined into one. An issue that you see all the time in delegated design is when the specifications are not clear that it is a delegated design. And where I have seen this come up, more than a handful of times, is when you have a project that has a GMP, and there is in the specifications a bunch of items that are delegated design, and the contractor did not include them, or included them as exceptions to the GMP. And so, to put that, I guess, more simply, there's a bunch of stuff in the specifications where the architect or engineer said, you contractor or somebody below you is going to do the design for this, and it's not included. And instead of including the price to be doing that, they include it as an exception. And at the end of the day, what in effect happens is no one has done it. And the contractor comes forward and says, well, they were missing from the drawings, and so it's actually an omission. And so the architect should really pick this up because now it's a change order. And the architect comes back and says, well, it was part of delegated design. It's not my fault you excluded it. And so this is really your omission, and you should have to do this, at your cost, because it's construction work that you just didn't include in your bid. And you see that, I've seen that come up a bunch of times with delegated design. And I think probably the best way to prevent that is for owners, I've seen, and owners reps and CMs, to be really mindful when they're looking, especially in a GMP process, when they're looking through the bid qualifications, the GMP qualifications, to make sure that there are not exclusions or qualifications of items that were delegated design, so that the owner doesn't wind up in a situation where no one has done it, but now someone will have to pay for it. So just interesting. So again, I'm gonna open up or start a discussion in the discussion forum about if anyone has any thoughts about any other benefits or drawbacks to these different types of delivery processes, and if anyone just has any general questions. But hopefully this gave you a basic understanding as to some of the most common types of delivery processes you'll find on a project.